What if you could get advice from a seasoned broadcast engineer who's been to literally hundreds of transmitter sites, even pre-built the equipment for some of them, and implemented great ideas on making them reliable and accessible? Check it out. It's coming up next. Shane Toven is next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store, with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics, with the Bionic Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb at the top of the tower. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Nashville studios, the Telos Alliance studios in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm glad to be back. I've been out. I left immediately after last week's show, and I got back at 2 o'clock this morning and had a fun time out west. What would have been NAB. So we'll talk about that just a little bit. I didn't cancel my plane ticket, although I didn't have any hotel reservations. So, yes, I slept in the desert. Hey, we got a great show coming up for you. Our guest is Shane Toven. Shane is the Senior Director of Senior Things at EMF. Hey, Shane, welcome in. Glad to see you.
Hey, Kirk. It's good to see you. Always good to be a guest here on TWiRT.
Senior Broadcast Engineer.
Correct. Yeah, which basically means I'm the guy who gets to figure out how to break stuff and figure out how to make it better.
You know, when you first moved to California, I remember you saying things like that you get to figure out how to break stuff. And, well, anyway, we got to give us a little taste, because in the promo for this episode, I mentioned that you've been flying around a lot. You've been doing a lot of traveling and seeing a lot of different sites. Give us a little taste of why have you been traveling so much?
Well, it varies. I mean, my travel schedule could be, I could end up anywhere at any given time within our network for one of our stations. And it might be just to check in on a station, see how things are going, check in on the field engineers and just kind of touch base with them. It might be a special project, it might be some kind of really stubborn type of problem that needs, a little bit of extra help to kind of get through and get past. I just kind of, I try to spend about half my time in travel and half my time in the shop and the lab. So, so far it seems to be working out pretty well.
On this episode, we've got a lot of pictures coming up, pictures from your lab, pictures from how you build things and put things together, and then pictures from actual troubleshooting out in the field and some of the gear that you install in the field to make things reliable, make things work better. So we're going to cover that in just a few minutes. And also I want to get an idea of the size and scope of your network. I think most of us are aware that K-Love and Air One signals are all over the place across the U.S., and I kind of want to get a better handle on that. Right now, though, I want to mention to you that Nautel, they've been doing these Transmission Talk Tuesdays most every Tuesday for a long time now. Ever since COVID started, Jeff Welton has been hosting these, and there's a very special one coming up Tuesday, October the 19th. This is worth your while to go register. If you've never been to one before, and even if you have, go to nautel.com/webinars and click on the Transmission Talk Tuesday. Now, there's one coming up for Tuesday, October 19th, and it is their 50th episode. Congratulations to Nautel and Jeff Welton for doing 50 episodes of Transmission Talk Tuesdays. It's kind of a, well, they're calling it kind of a gala event, their episode here, the 50th episode. They want you to tell them what to cover. And that's one of the cool things about the Transmission Talk Tuesday. So when you go to register, go to nautel.com/webinars and click on the date, click on that link for October 19th. And of course you fill out your name and your email address and where you are, but then you can submit a question, and they might call on you if you're able to, if you join the webinar and you can talk on your mic. Turn your camera on, great. You don't have to. Or they can just take your question and answer it offline, so to speak, without involving putting you on. Either way, it really is a roundtable discussion, and that's what Jeff Welton does. He's been hosting, well, obviously 49 of them so far. Actually, I think, 49 of them so far, and the 50th one is coming up on Tuesday, October the 19th. So go register for that at nautel.com/webinars. I want to thank Nautel for doing this for our industry. And what a great service. Jeff Welton during COVID mostly been at home and doing his regular sales calls, but Jeff sees a lot of people and gets a lot of experience. So I encourage you to do it. I will try to be there. I see Tuesday the 19th. Yeah, I can be there. I'll be there Tuesday the 19th. So we'll see you there. All right. Thanks, Nautel. Nautel.com/webinars. All right. Back to Kirk and Shane Toven. Shane, kind of give me an idea of the size and scope of the EMF, Educational Media Foundation. Otherwise, we know them as people that own and run K-Love and Air One. Talk to me about how many stations you guys have.
Oh, goodness. Well, we have right now about 1,060 signals on the air, give or take, split about 60-40 between, full service, full power stations and translators. But it's a fairly large network. Cover most of the country and even a couple of other places, like we cover Puerto Rico, we cover American Samoa, a station that you should be familiar with.
Yeah, certainly.
So it's a pretty extensive network. It's a big job.
Mm-hmm. I don't know the exact numbers of the other large broadcasters in the U.S. Of course, there's iHeart, there's Cumulus. Those are those two. But is that more transmitters than iHeart has, or just a few less?
Boy, I think iHeart has a few more than we do right now.
Uh-huh.
I haven't looked up the numbers lately either. But
as a mix, what percentage would you say of K-Love and Air One are full power FMs versus maybe translators or other lower power services?
It's probably about, I forget, it's about a 60-40 split, although I forget which direction, in which direction. I want to say it's about 40% full power stations and 60% translators and other signals. So
it just so happens that the sites that I've been to, maybe that share a site with me, one of my stations, I tend to see you guys have full power licenses where I go. So I personally am not familiar with any of your translator sites. So that's cool.
Well, what's kind of interesting is we actually treat the translators a lot like full power stations in terms of the way we monitor and we do monitor and control for them. The commission says you have to be able to control them within 3 minutes, but they don't really say anything about monitoring necessarily. But we actually make a point to monitor all of these as well as be able to control them. So our NOC, if a translator goes off, our NOC should know about it.
Gotcha. NOC being a Network Operations Center.
The Network Operations Center. Yep. We got a couple.
Is that in California?
It is. It's in the Rockland headquarters.
Okay. Good deal. Well, we've got a lot of pictures to share, and each one has got stories, and I hope we have time to cover all these pictures. So I think we should go ahead and start rolling into them. And these, as usual, they're kind of in order, but not necessarily in perfect order, so we may jump around a bit. Would that be okay with you, Shane, if we go ahead and start hearing your stories?
Yeah, I had some of them I sent were from the same sites, and some, there were some groups, of pictures. But we'll see how it rolls here.
All right, we're going to work Suncast really hard this episode. So Suncast, go right ahead. Oh, by the way, now I got a comment. K-Love and Air One seem to do a very consistent job of RDS and HD radio metadata, pad data, if you will. It's nice. I love to see you guys doing this, and I think you're setting a good example for other broadcasters to up their game and get that metadata on the air. Go ahead and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump off. Go ahead and talk about it.
It is certainly something. No, it certainly is something that we pay a lot of attention to. In fact, we have some custom back-end systems that have been developed to manage all of that data. This picture actually shows my rentals radio just after I got done upgrading a site to HD. So we'll kind of get into that in a couple of the other pictures later.
Okay.
This particular vehicle is a Chrysler 300. They all come standard with HD. So if you're ever renting a vehicle and want one with HD, see if they've got a Chrysler 300 out there.
Nice. Okay, what's next? Go ahead, Suncast.
Okay. This is an interesting one.
Oh, this is an audio processor.
You're familiar with Stereo Tool, and this particular one is Stereo Tool in a hardware box. It's the Themio STX. So I've been playing around with that, testing that, and kind of seeing where we can go. And as usual, with it, I managed to break it. But right away, Hans knew exactly what was going on, and I managed to stumble across a condition that was just almost next to impossible to find, but I managed to find it. So,
Of course you did.
but he knew exactly what was going on. He was really quick about, we'll fix that. So,
Good deal. All righty, let's move on and see the next picture.
Here we go. This is actually kind of cool. This is a machine that we bought for our shop, and we had problems getting some of our metalwork, our custom metalwork for our racks done. We have some brackets that we put in there to hold the the power strip and to the UPS and various other things. So the idea was, well, why don't we see if we can maybe fabricate them ourselves? Why not? There's another major manufacturer out there. I won't name names, but they actually do this. They do exactly this for some of their products. They 3D print parts to custom parts to go in them, brackets and so on. So we bought a machine called a Snapmaker 2.0. It's cool because it's a 3D printer. It is a laser, engraver and carver. It is a CNC milling machine as well. So it slices, it dices.
Wait, so
it really
lays the medium down, and it can go back and mill it out?
Well, it's actually 3 different modes. It has to be set up for each mode specifically, so you can only do a particular mode in one run. But you could use it in combination to do various things if you wanted to. But in this case, I'm 3D printing some brackets to go into our racks. And right now, just for test, I'm printing them out of what's called PLA filament, which is a little bit softer kind of material. But you can also print them out of ABS plastic and a number of other materials as well. They have so many different filaments available for these things. It's really kind of fun.
What does it take to 3D print with metal? Would you end up with some kind of a metal product?
They actually do make metal impregnated filament as well. So you can do that. And they do make 3D printers that actually do print with metal. Those are a little bit more, obviously, on the high-end side. It's more for kind of the industrial side of things. But they they do a sintering process, and they can print things with metal. It's really cool.
And hey, Suncast, if you want to come back to a 2-shot for a sec. Of all things, last night on my flight from Las Vegas, and I was in the southern Utah and the national parks because they canceled NAB, right? But I went ahead and went out there to the national parks and had a grand time touring around, seeing our beautiful national parks out there. And on the flight back last night, I sat next to a guy who's the VP of sales for a 3D printing company, and they specialize.
That's so cool.
Get this, they specialize in 3D printing dental appliances so that the dentist can print your dentures or your bridge or whatever it is right there in the office.
Makes perfect sense. Why not?
Yeah, it doesn't have to go. Yeah, and imagine the precision needed though to print that. So
and there are some very, very high-end machines out there. You can get them at all price points, but I mean, even the ones just to kind of play around with, you can find for a couple $100 or so.
I actually showed him a few Telos products because I got to tell you, here's a belt pack for a Telos intercom system. This is the Infinity belt pack, and I'm telling you, and this metal housing on this sucker cost, you would not believe how much it costs to get the casting ready for this. It took several tries. By very professional companies, and it's all got to be, sealed up for RF compliance, CE, and all that kind of stuff. And the gentleman I sat next to said, "Yeah, we can actually print that metal, and it's going to feel just like that one does." So
absolutely,
what I'm saying, 3D printing is, I think, a technology to keep on watching. But let's go on with some more pictures. I didn't mean to take such an aside, but that's cool. That's your 3D printing the parts that you need. Suncast, there we go.
Okay. So let me see. This is the back of one of our racks in progress in the shop. So our shop actually builds these standardized equipment racks to send out into the field. So, we get standardized components, standardized wiring, and this is one of those kind of in progress.
Would this be, I guess some people call this a program input equipment, PIE?
Program input equipment, yeah, they call that, a lot of places they call it PIE, program input equipment. So yeah, that's essentially what this is.
So this will typically go next to the transmitter, unless you're at a low power site where the transmitter fits in the rack, yeah?
Right, where you can mount the transmitter at the bottom of the rack. And, things like a 2.5 kilowatt transmitter we can mount in the bottom of the rack, so.
Okay. Let's move on and see what's next then.
Okay, now this is another interesting one. This is part of a booster network that we did in Chicago with Geo Broadcasting. It's really kind of cool. There are some areas in that in Chicago, especially some of the suburban areas where the signal from the station just didn't penetrate all that well. Geo Broadcasting has been using equipment from Gates Air, specifically the IP link MPXP, to send synchronized MPX audio to these these on-channel booster transmitters, and it works. It works. You drive around, and there are some crash zones, but those can be predicted and adjusted accordingly. But you have better coverage where you didn't before.
Now, of course, I got to ask about the mounting of that. Looks like a transmitter there. Is it going to stay that way?
This is actually an outdoor rack. It's not deep enough for the Gates Air transmitter. So yeah, it had to get a little bit creative with the mounting. There's still plenty of airflow through there, front to back, and so it's mounted. It's mounted hanging like that in the outdoor equipment enclosure.
Wow, I've never had to do that. That's pretty interesting. But, I can think of a couple of places where that might have been a better idea than what I did with the sticking way out the back of the rack.
Yeah, drawback is you lose a bunch of vertical units, but in this case, it wasn't a big deal. Yeah.
What's next? What's next on cast?
Here's an interesting one. This is
AM radio?
A radio. Yeah, actually, this is a radio that I had in a rental, an Audi Q5 rental. It was a connected radio, so it will actually listen over the air, and if the stations have programmed into radio DNS what their streaming source is, it will actually switch to streaming, or ask you if you want to switch to streaming when you start driving outside the coverage area of the station. In this case, the other interesting feature was notice how it's giving me data on AM about what's playing. That's not normal. That's actually coming from the LTE connection and some watermarking. So if broadcasters aren't providing this data, this radio can, for better or worse, some people are not a fan of this feature. It can display its own metadata just by watermarking the audio and looking it up in a database. So I found that really kind of cool.
Wow. That is pretty neat. Cool. What's next here?
Here's the enclosure for the 3D printer laser engraver that I mentioned. It starts to look like a pretty substantial piece of machinery once you actually put the enclosure on the outside.
What's the reason for the enclosure?
Well, mostly you notice the tinting on those panels. You're not supposed to look at the laser light with your remaining eye.
With your remaining eye, okay.
So this is actually for protection from laser light, or when you're doing CNC work to protect from flying materials. So, it's got LED lighting on the inside. It's got a little exhaust fan on the back. So just kind of keep everything nice and secure and enclosed while you're working on some of these jobs.
We are talking to Shane Toven. He's the senior broadcast engineer. What was the title again, Shane? I'm sorry.
You're right. Senior broadcast engineer for Educational Media Foundation.
And Shane, I know you're mostly at transmitter sites, but I've seen you at studios before to help out, right?
On occasion. It just depends on where the needs are. I do partner with our studio group.
We're gonna mix programming and commercial into one thing here. You familiar with this device, Shane? Have you seen these?
Oh yes, yeah. We actually have a number of those in our studios.
You do, and I love the fact they have this little rubber bumpers here at the top, and so you put this up underneath, and you can run your screws up through here, and it doesn't rattle, it doesn't shake, because it's got these rubber bumpers here, and it's nice and tight. Now, what is it? It's a headphone amp, and it's got both sizes of headphone plugs in here. Yeah, the 3.5 millimeter and the 1/4 inch, both sizes. It's got plenty of volume, and on the back, it's got RJ45 connectors. Now, that's not Ethernet, but what that is the Studio Hub standard for getting audio from wherever it's coming from. Let's say the output of an Axia X node, for example, and it'll just plug right into here, and you get your stereo balanced audio, and it loops through to the next one. And you can inject power here with a wall wart power supply or whatever you want, but 16 volts AC, and it'll power about 3 of these just through simple wiring. The other thing that's pretty cool that Angry Audio is doing now, again, that's the Angry Audio headphone gizmo, but they're doing this disconnector. Shane, have you ever had to repair a headphone jack on a console or something? Has somebody walked
Oh,
away?
yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Even worse when they damage the connector on the headphones themselves, because those wires are tiny.
Oh, yeah, those tiny ones. Well, this will prevent that because if the person walks away, boop, it just comes apart.
Yep.
And they can walk away with the headphone and the cable and this part of it, and this part stays plugged into your headphone amp, just like that. And it's like a MagSafe connector. It boop, goes right back together. Left and right are perfect. They're left in place. You see there's 4 conductors right there. And it only connects one way. The other way, won't work. So there you go. And it also comes in the 3.5 millimeter size. So if you need 3.5 millimeter like that, there you go. That's from Angry Audio. The website is angryaudio.com. And this is available from most broadcast equipment dealers. And also you can get the Studio Hub gear. So when you ask for Studio Hub gear, ask for genuine Studio Hub gear because it's the best. It's been proven for a couple of decades now, and it's just good stuff. Angry Audio, you'll find lots of stuff to help you out at angryaudio.com. Hey, our show This Week in Radio Tech is also brought to you by Max Connect Wireless. We're going to hear this quick testimonial. Be right back.
I'm Gary Morrill, Midwest Regional Director of Engineering for Alpha Media. When I first spoke with Josh Bone about Max Connect, he told me they'd work great for remote transmitter sites where connectivity was a challenge. And he's absolutely right. We even have sites where we're using this as a backup to our STL using Max Connect's dual carrier option, and it works perfectly. We also have times where we need to be able to get out to a venue where it's kind of challenging because everybody and his brother is trying to stream video at the same time, like at a big sporting event. And you know what? Our data gets through every time because it's prioritized packet data. It works for us. It'll work for you. Max Connect. Check it out.
I've got one right here. Being in the South where I am, I know a lot of folks were really disappointed with the outcome of the Alabama-Texas A&M game. But you know who wasn't disappointed? Anybody using a Max Connect wireless 4G LTE modem, because they had priority data over all those fans who were upset, about Alabama's loss to Texas A&M. And I'm sure the Longhorn fans were doing great. Shane, have you ever got a chance to use one of these Max Connect modems?
Seen those.
I think you're muted. There you go.
Did I get muted?
Go ahead. No, you're fine.
Yeah, I have seen those, and they they do work really well in areas where it's kind of congested, where you expect some less than ideal cell service.
And the fixed IP address is helpful too. At a transmitter site, you don't have to have something there, making a rendezvous somewhere or checking in. You've got the fixed IP address. Max Connect Wireless. You can go to Max Connect. I know it's spelled funny because we're all out of internet names, but Max Connect, 2 X's and a K there. MaxConnect.com. And you can pick your favorite carrier. If Verizon works really well, or Sprint, or which is now part of T-Mobile, works really well, or AT&T, whatever you think works well for your area, you can get that carrier. But you need to check it out at MaxConnect.com. Thanks, Josh Bone, and thanks, Max Connect, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, Shane, we're talking to Shane Toven. He is the senior broadcast engineer at EMF, K-Love, Air One. So he's responsible for a whole lot of transmitters. Shane, shall we just continue on the hit parade with the pictures and finding out what your daily life is like here?
Absolutely. Okay, so this is another one. This is a station that's in a fairly small. I had another picture that went with this that I wanted to show as well. I don't know where that is in the lineup, but maybe we'll get to that. So this is a station that's in a fairly compact space. So you can see there were kind of some creative things that had to be done to get everything into that rack.
I can see the call sign and the city. It says WKTH, Tullahoma, Tennessee. That is down the road from me. That's literally an hour and 10-minute drive from my house.
Yep. Yep. Actually, it is. It's very close to you.
Wow. So, hey, just real quick, tell us what goes in one of your racks here. And this looks pretty typical to me. What's in there?
So this is a pretty typical single station rack. On the top, you can see there's a Nautel VS 2.5. Next thing is a set of Fostex monitor speakers, so we can actually monitor the audio from satellite receiver or off the air. Next down is an Inovonics 531 modulation monitor. Then we have an X node underneath that, just for some audio routing within the rack. And then next down is an audio processor, probably an Orban 5700. Under that, an Inovonics RDS generator. And then finally, down at the bottom, we have the Relio, the Automat. Actually, this is an Automat control, I believe, remote control, and the relay panel for that, the I/O panel. Under that, a Pico satellite receiver. Or XDS, a satellite receiver. Yeah. So that's our primary source of audio to the site. And then finally, down there at the bottom, we have a Crown 3-channel EAS receiver and the NDEC. And then underneath that, a VSAT modem. And then down at the very bottom, a UPS. So yeah, typical air chain. It's kind of nice to be able to get into all of this stuff remotely, so we can actually see what's going on at a given site. That's what the VSAT modem allows us to do. So sites where we can't get LTE or can't get terrestrial internet, for example, which is a lot of our mountaintops. This VSAT modem actually provides a nice little backhaul for us over the existing satellite channel.
So would you say that every single site of yours has a satellite dish, or most of them do? I take it your sites are a little different, because you mentioned the VSAT modem for sites where you can't get internet otherwise.
Right. I mean, yeah, the VSAT modem has been the default for quite a while. So most of our sites are on VSAT. And yeah, most of them have satellite dishes at them, but there are a handful of them where it's IP feed only. For whatever reason, a satellite dish just wasn't feasible, so we had to do an IP feed to it. And there are some cases where we end up sending audio with a codec from a transmitter site, say, to a translator site at another tower nearby. So.
The Axia X node there, of course, they're my employer. I'm real familiar with the X node. I'm trying to understand how you use the X node, just as a router?
Basically, yeah. So it lets us kind of, mostly for monitoring purposes in the rack, so we can route anything to those monitor speakers up there, the satellite receiver, the off-air mod monitor, several different points in the chain that we can route to those speakers. And in our HD racks, we actually use X nodes for the EAS audio insertion as well. So
nice,
because we have the multiple channels that we need to insert it on.
Of this rack, which of those items tend to be regular maintenance? So what do you have whenever an engineer goes there, a regional engineer who goes and checks on this? What's on their checklist to make sure is okay?
Biggest ones: make sure you check the air filters on the transmitter, clean them. And make sure that you check the UPS as well. Make sure that your battery is still good and that it's not going to fail when it loses power. Because the last thing you need is a rack sitting there that's dead because it has no UPS power.
Sure. And I know you've got the Crown multiple receivers for the EAS unit. What kind of care do you have to go to receive your assigned stations at a given site in the presence of presumably plenty of RF if it's a multi-station site? How do you get that done?
So what's nice is those Crown receivers are actually really good about that in high RF environments. Most of our sites just have a little discone antenna outside to pick up their monitoring assignments.
Really?
NWS, and then the LP1 and LP2. Sometimes there are more elaborate means that we have to go to, depending on where that monitoring assignment actually is in relation to the tower site. Sometimes there's a Yagi up on the tower for a particular monitoring assignment if we absolutely can't get it, by just an antenna down at the shack, for instance. So,
and then are all your sites tied in with a given state's, is it called CAPS? CAP server?
Yeah, all of our stations get their CAP data either via IP directly or over the satellite through the Pico receiver. So since we have so many sites, we actually kind of came up with a system. Can you imagine DDoSing the FEMA web servers with 1,000 some odd signals at once, trying to hit it and retrieve all of that data? I don't know how many FM. I mean, I'm sure they've beefed up capacity, and it actually wouldn't be a problem, but. At the time when we launched, when we said we were going to implement CAP on all of our stations, they're kind of like, yeah. So we actually ended up working with a company called Alert FM to grab the cap data from them on their satellite carrier and then turn it around and relay it to our sites. So
let's move on. Take a look at some more pictures then. Hopefully we'll get the complimentary one. What's this one?
Okay, so this is another one of the boosters in Chicago. Pretty typical little setup for that. You've got a codec transmitter, and then some of our usual complement of equipment, the modulation monitor, a little remote control, network switch, UPS, and that's mostly so we can monitor these the performance of these boosters and just make sure that they're on the air, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and there aren't any issues.
Good deal. All right, let's move on. Next one.
Oh. Okay, so here's another shot of our tech shop. You can see a couple more racks kind of in the midst of construction there on the right. Over on the left, a bunch of bins full of parts. So our techs, the shop stays pretty busy building these racks and repairing gear that comes in from the field and all that fun stuff.
Over the years, have you guys built roughly 1,000 racks like that?
Well, give or take. I mean, it really depends. The technique that we've used over the years has kind of evolved. So now we've got a couple of standard designs that actually are really, I can't really think of a whole lot of ways to streamline and improve them. So we've really refined the design of the racks, and I think the next big thing rack-wise will probably be some kind of virtual design where we have like an appliance out at the transmitter site that virtualizes a number of these components as software.
Yeah. Good deal. Let's look at the next
the
picture.
advantage. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I know what that is.
Yeah. So this is actually our C-band downlink in Puerto Rico. So we actually we're in the process of moving to a different satellite. So the dish, actually, its original location was not ideal. It was kind of right on the edge, kind of almost looking through the tower. So we ended up having to move it a little bit further, give it a little bit more clear view. So the guys from Link Up Communications came down there, gave us a hand with that. And, project, he's still kind of in progress right there when I took that shot. But overall, the project came out really nicely. So.
Nice. Okay, what's next here?
Oh, this was interesting.
Is this trouble? It's not quite pretty and clean.
Potentially. I'm glad we caught it, actually. So as we were installing a combiner at the Puerto Rico facility for another station that's combining with us, we took apart the connector at the top of the Nautel transmitter and found this. So probably not a big issue. It may not have caused a problem. Viswar still looked great, but you never want to take apart a bullet and see that because it always has the potential to lead for trouble. So I don't know if it wasn't seated properly or if there were maybe some oils on it that kind of contributed to some heat there. So needless to say that particular bullet was replaced just as a precaution. I mean, there was no carbon, no arcing or anything like that, just apparently a lot of heat.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. What's next? Oh, back in the shop.
Oh, okay. This is my playground. This is actually my R&D lab, and it is a mess right now. I
was going to ask you, how are things organized there? Is that Dewey Decimal or Library of Congress system you got?
I almost wish I hadn't put that one in there, but yeah, that's my little lab.
Yeah,
that's my lab. That's my playground for kind of figuring out how to break things and how to make them better. So.
What are some of the, I see a couple of orange or a couple of tools there laying around. What are some of the most common or maybe some of the exotic tools that you use in your work?
Well, the most common these days is actually my laptop, believe it or not. Everything's got an Ethernet port. So I spend just about as much time looking at my equipment with my laptop than I do, doing things, physically. I mean, the most physical thing is, mounting it in the rack, taking it out of the rack, shuffling things around and all of that fun stuff. So it's not nearly like the days when you had to do component repair on things.
Yeah, it's different than that. Yeah. I got to believe that one of the kind of frustrating things dealing with, at least for me, dealing with different manufacturers' equipment that has embedded computerization in it. So it's got an embedded web server in it. So many things these days do, because you can almost do that on a chip. You can do it on a chip. And is different manufacturers, everybody's got their own standard for what you can set a password to be. right? And is the default username, is it admin with a capital A, admin with a lowercase a? Is it all lowercase? I mean, it seems like it's more varied than even websites, the different commerce websites that we deal with day in, day out. Sometimes I get a little frustrated at, oh yeah, I'm logging into and I won't name any names. I'm logging into this. Oh yeah, I can't use a period in this password with this piece of equipment. So is that lack of standardization ever frustrating to you, or is it just me?
It can be, yeah. And, I know a lot of engineers, just because of that frustration, will leave things at the default username and password.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Do that. Please don't do that. So yeah, we change the usernames and passwords to something that's a little bit, that at least we can kind of record and, and keep in. Use a password manager. A password manager is another great technique for dealing with that. So you can say, oh, hey, this is, this X device, this has this username and password. Oh, Y device, that's this username and password. But password managers really help with that. I use one called LastPass, but there's also 1Password. There are a number of them out there that you can work with.
Okay, now if you can't answer this question, if it's too sensitive, then don't. But I'm a little bit curious. You got 1,000 sites. Does each piece of equipment at each site have a different IP address, or do things on a LAN at site A have the same IP addresses as things on a LAN at site B?
Well, I'll say this: there is some standardization in the scheme, but yeah, I mean, each site is on its own blocks of IP addresses.
Okay, that's so that. See, to me that would be useful, because I've got a bunch of gear that I take care of at almost 20 sites that I look after from time to time, and in my password manager, of course, I put the IP address is what tells my browser or LastPass, hey, here's the password for that device. And so basically almost every place I have, every device has a different IP address, because every site has a different subnet. Now subnet's only 255 numbers in like the third octet. We got more sites than that, so you got to extend that a bit.
So how I typically deal with that in a password manager, if I know that I've used a particular username and password on a certain type of gear, usually what I'll do is I'll just record that without an IP address associated with it. Or if in fact, the passwords happen to be different at sites, that's, again, you can still record that in the password manager and keep track of that. But yeah, it's definitely something that can get, it can get overwhelming, but yeah, there are ways of dealing with it. So
we've got more pictures to go and more stories from Shane Toven and more great advice. So Shane's going to be teaching us some things. If he hasn't already, he's going to continue to teach us. Our show this week in Radio Tech. Shane, in your rack, you showed some gear from Innovonics, and Innovonics has been a faithful sponsor of our show. They make a lot of cool stuff. I noticed they made your modulation monitor and your RDS encoder. We're going to hear about a cool product from Innovonics, and we'll be right back in just a minute.
The Aaron 655 is the latest addition to the Innovonics family of rebroadcast receivers, designed specifically for FM broadcast translators, also referred to as relay transmitters. The Aaron 655 is unique as an uncompromising DSP-based HD radio and FM receiver combined with a powerful 3-band audio processor and dynamic RDS encoder. IP connectivity adds streaming capabilities, and a web browser interface gives you total remote control of the unit from any PC or mobile device. The Aaron 655 gives you maximum flexibility for program sources. Select program audio from analog FM, digital channels HD1 through 8, streaming sources, and analog or AES digital line inputs, all with assignable failover audio backup. The internal RDS encoder allows you to customize your RDS messaging. You can use incoming off-air RDS data, convert HD radio pad data to RDS, convert streamed metadata to RDS, or receive IP telnet data. Comprehensive audio processing includes gated and windowed AGC, a unique syllabic leveler, 3 bands of compression, and both wideband and independent HF limiting. Easy setup is achieved by using 10 factory presets and 10 customizable presets. The processor also supports day parting, allowing automatic preset changes to follow different programming formats throughout your broadcast day. The front panel has an OLED display and jog wheel with intuitive menus for easy setup, advanced control, and editing for all operating parameters. The Aaron 655 dynamic web interface gives you total remote control of the unit from any PC or mobile device. A comprehensive set of menus includes a quick overview of now playing info, input-output control, processor options, RDS encoder, alarms and notifications, SNMP settings, and much more. You can also listen to the live audio broadcast streamed through the web interface.
Pretty cool stuff from Inovonics, the Aaron 655, and a whole range of products. By the way, if you want to know more about Inovonics, you can go back a few episodes. I think 4 episodes ago, we talked to Ben Barber, who's the CEO over at Inovonics. Started out as an engineer, and now he's the CEO, so he's certainly involved in a lot of decision-making and some design there, too. You can get Inovonics from Broadcasters General Store. Their website is bgs.cc, but you should do what most folks do and give them a call because they're so nice. I just talked to Jessica Shute there today, 352-622-7700. That's 352-622-7700. I've had that number in my Rolodex or in my brain for, oh my goodness, probably almost 30 years now. Check it out from Broadcasters General Store. Thanks a lot, BGS, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech and Inovonics. We're talking to Shane Toven. He is the senior broadcast engineer at EMF, K-Love, and Air One. Shane, we got more pictures to look through here and more sites. So I don't know where we are. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, this was Puerto Rico. That actually, boy, I couldn't ask for a better office than that. I just had to snap a picture looking out from the tower site.
What was it hot and humid that
gorgeous
day?
Down there. It's it's always pretty hot and humid down there.
Yeah.
I was dripping when I got out of the car at the airport. When I got out to the went to go get my car at the airport.
So could you drive to this site?
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
it's on a, it's actually some populated area up there. So there's, you can get to the site. It wasn't too bad. So.
Gotcha. All right, let's see what's next.
Okay, so this is our happy knock. We got a couple of our knock guys there, just kind of keeping an eye on all of our stations. So they're 24/7, kind of keeping an eye on things day and night.
Huh. Okay. Anything? Is there custom software that helps you run the knock?
So there are a few pieces of custom software that we rely on. One is called SUI, and we. I won't get into the name, but it actually kind of serves as the alarm board and collects all of the alarms from our remote controls and shows. I got another picture there of the big heads-up displays in the knock there as well.
Oh yeah,
but, they're constantly going through stations, making sure everything is staying on the air, and then if not, they call out the troops, so to speak, call out the engineer, and just try to get her back on the air.
Let's see what's next on the list. These, again, are in no particular order, but maybe we'll eventually come across other knock pictures. Oh, yeah, that's from a callback to earlier.
That was from the 3D. Yeah, this was from the 3D printing, actually. So I basically made one design for that part, copied, pasted it, and then told it to print that batch, and off it went. And next morning, I had my parts.
Very nice. All right, next. Oh.
Okay, so this was back to that connector, the bullet I was showing you earlier. Again, this is the connector cup inside of the Nautel, just right at the top there. And somehow somebody got some fingerprints on the inside, so I suspect that too may have kind of contributed a little bit of oil in there. And I'm not saying wear white gloves while you work on your transmission line, but might not be a bad idea. People forget about that, especially in high power transmission, that if you leave oil deposits on that line, it can cause some hot spots.
Let's talk about that for a second. I really had never been very careful about that. And I was handling a bullet recently, and maybe it was a tower guy. Maybe, I'm not sure who said, Kirk, you really ought to be wearing some cotton gloves when you handle that, or wipe it off before you plug it together. And I thought, oh, yeah, this is what, silver plated?
Yeah.
And and silver tarnishes, and tarnish ain't good. It's we'd rather it not be tarnished. Talk to me about your practices in handling bullets or other silver-plated stuff.
So I have to admit, I really didn't pay much attention to it either for a number of years until someone pointed it out to me. And I admit, I still don't wear, I don't always wear like gloves or anything when I'm handling transmission line. I probably should, but at the very least, what I try to do is take some denatured alcohol and wipe it down before before I start assembling it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Okay. All right. What's next? Next picture.
Okay, this is back to that Audi that I was talking about earlier, and it actually had a fairly nice user interface to the radio once you started getting getting your way around it. So pretty straightforward, actually. It's it didn't have like the traditional volume and tuning knobs that you would expect. Well, it kind of did. They're a little bit further down there. They're not right in the center of the cluster like a lot of vehicles had it. But yeah, really well thought out interface overall.
There's in the very lower right-hand corner of the picture there's a little knob on the center console. I've sat in an Audi a few times now, and that's, to me, it's a weird placement. Maybe you get used to it. Your hand falls there on the center console.
Yeah.
It's really over toward the passenger side.
It is, yeah. If we get to it, I've got another shot of another vehicle that I'll comment on. It was a similar kind of layout, but a much different user experience. So.
I hope I didn't delete it. So let's go to the next picture. Oh, we're back.
All right. So here's back in the shop. More of the racks that are getting ready, and it has kind of an ebb and flow to it. Sometimes there are a bunch of them sitting there on the floor waiting to go out, and other times there's just a handful of them. But usually they have one or two prepped at least and ready to go for the next site that needs one.
Hey, before we go to the next picture, I got a message from one of our viewers, Tim Braddock. And Tim is pointing out that you guys do something really smart with your transmitter racks, and that is you light the inside of them. Talk about how you do that.
I didn't even think to mention that. You might have seen it in one of the earlier shots of some of the racks. But yeah, we actually just put some LED tape around the back perimeter, the inside back perimeter of the rack. And it's the little motion detector. You can get this stuff on Amazon or from AliExpress. It's super cheap. And you put that back there, and man, it makes such a difference. You go behind the rack, it lights up, and you can see everything inside the back of the rack. Even if the site doesn't have really great lighting, the inside of your rack is well lit, so you have a lot of light to work with.
This is, in fact, it's so smart because this is so often a problem. You have an equipment rack. You might have good lighting overhead, but the gear you want to look at is shadowed by all the rack, by the top of the rack and the sides of the rack and the front of the rack, of course. So that's where the equipment front panels are. How do you see your connectors in the back really well? And, I bring a headlight along with me or a trouble light to hang there. But you guys put this LED strip in. Yeah, it costs a few dollars at the most. I mean, under 15.
Yeah, it's not expensive to do. And yeah, you don't have to do anything exotic. You can find various types of these LED strips and the little motion detectors that go with it to interrupt the power supply.
Well, one
other tip.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one other tip that I kind of picked up over the years. I mean, even if you don't have that, that makes a difference regardless. Putting the lights rather than overhead in a shack, maybe adding some along the walls on the sides.
Yeah,
that really can help, especially in the back of a transmitter where you're trying to access it, trying to work, or when you're looking at control panels on the front of the transmitter. Man, it really does make a huge difference.
You're right. At so many sites, the thing you need to see is the worst lighted thing in the room. Oh yeah, there's a bright light overhead, and you can see the front of the transmitter. It's great. I don't need to see the front of the transmitter. It's great. I don't need to see the paint job on the front of the transmitter. I need to see the connectors and the edge card connectors or whatever may be back there. That's what I need to see.
You just see inside that tube cavity. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the first time I ever saw one of your racks, guys, if you pull nothing else, audience members, away from this show, LED strips, the tape strips, and they are cheap. I just put a bunch of them in my kitchen, hidden by the cabinets. So, and I was going to turn them on and off, but they take so little. I just leave them on 24/7. That way, my kitchen is lit up when I get the hungries at 1 o'clock in the morning. The kitchen is dimly lit up, but it's very, very nice. And by the way, I was in a hotel. Let's see, it was night before last, and when you walk from the bed toward the bathroom area, there's a motion detector, and the hidden LED strip lights come on. And they're very gentle. They don't, jar you awake. But you know how many times I stubbed my toe there? 0. Because there was just enough lighting in the hotel room from that.
It's the little things. It really is.
Yeah. It's the little
so
things.
obvious, but it's like, why didn't anybody do this before?
And the way you guys put the lights, if you're standing behind the rack, it's on the inside of the of the metal sides and back, so you don't even see that. You're not blinded by the pinpoints of light on the strip. You don't see those because they're just inside the door lip, the frame there on each side and across the top. So you never see the lights themselves. You see what they're lighting up.
Yep, absolutely.
Smart. Brilliant. All right, what's our next picture here? Oh, there's Shane.
Okay, so here's another couple of racks in the shop. These are actually kind of reference racks. They don't really get modified or changed all that much. So the one on the right is actually for it's our HD installation. You can see the second X node down there for switching in EAS to the HD subcarriers, and then up at the top there's a Sophia for monitoring the HD. Now, Inovonics is actually they announced a new HD mod monitor that I'm really excited about, so I can't wait to kind of get my hands on that one. So, and then behind me was the original prototype for the racks that we're deploying now.
Why is there a big Apple logo on some piece of equipment? Somebody's slapped that on there.
Apparently one of our guys must have been an Apple fan. I don't know.
There's nothing Apple in that rack, I don't think.
No,
all right, what's next? Ooh.
Okay, so this was actually, again, that the installation I did, the HD upgrade on an NVLT transmitter. Basically involved just switching out the exciter, putting in the multicast, making all the audio connections, and away you went. So now you can see that this one's got nice, happy little HD sidebands alongside the analog carrier. So I'm also looking at the MER. Here's another nice little tip, especially for Nautel transmitters. MER stands for modulation error rate, and it can actually make a huge difference in the performance of your HD signals. So if you do have a Nautel GV series transmitter, and I think even the VSHDs have this, you go into your preset, and there's an option there that lets you select whether your priority is MER or whether it's efficiency. Well, in all honesty, the efficiency doesn't take a huge hit. I mean, you can see here it's still 70%, even with MER priority enabled. So we're looking right there at a particular carrier that's got an MER of 17.8. Normally, you want to see that anywhere above, say, maybe 12 or 13. But man, you can look like on one of the Inovonics, like the Sophia, it shows you decode quality and various other things, and you can actually see that change with that setting. So there's another kind of little tip for HD performance.
Interesting. Okay, nice. What's next?
Okay, so apparently I took a lot of pictures of racks. So this is another
that's
rack
what you
in
got.
progress.
That's one of the things you guys do is make these racks, so you gotta be proud of them.
Oh my goodness, our shop is really good at it. Yep, you can see the lights actually in the adjacent one there from the back. You see the little.
Oh yeah, I see them shining through the vent panels at the top of the rack on the right. Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, now what's next?
Okay, so this is that site we were at earlier. There's not a lot of room in that building for filters. It's a fairly small building. So got clever and kind of mounted the filter overhead in this case. And I think this actually was a filter for receive. It's not big enough for transmit, but this was for, I think you were talking about how we get the RF signals for EAS monitoring. Well, in some cases you have to do stuff like this, put a filter cabinet in front of it. To really make it work. So this was one of those cases. So,
and this is smart.
Mounting,
I was going to say, this is smart because a lot of gear needs to be mounted where you can deal with it. But the chances of you having to deal with that filter on any kind of regular basis are almost zero. You deal with it once. And if you have a problem, sure, okay, you may tweak it later on, but you shouldn't have to. So you can mount this thing out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't matter if it's horizontal or vertical, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also make mention here that wire ladder is a beautiful thing. If you don't have it at your transmitter sites, the next time you build one or have a chance to build one, put in some wire ladder over your transmitters, over your racks. It makes a huge difference in terms of managing wires. So you don't have things just draped everywhere.
Yeah. Nice. All right. What's next? Another rack.
All right. This is a wide shot of that the HD rack that I was talking about. So you can see there are a few extra components there: the Sophia up at the top, the second X node, the Omnia 9 for audio processing, the Justin to keep the time alignment, and then down at the bottom the multicast and the VS and VS HD. So a little bit different from an analog site, but not a lot. It's like an analog site plus a few extra components.
Now you're building these racks up in your lab in California, right?
Right.
And in every one of these racks, I've seen a big, long cardboard box near the bottom. Are you sending, is this a care package or what's in the box?
Yeah, that's generally the accessories that go with the rack, documentation, mounting brackets, anything that, came with the equipment that might be handy to the engineer in the future.
Okay.
Especially the documentation. So
cables,
it's not things like that, like interface cables. Yeah.
So it's not Mrs. Fields cookies or something like
that. No, although now you're giving me an idea. Throw some candy in there,
you got to put some food in there that. Yeah, you got to put some maybe an MRE in there or something like that.
Something, yeah.
Suncast, do we have any more pictures? Oh yeah, we do. Okay, what's this?
Okay, so this actually was the picture of the tower in Puerto Rico. You can see off to the right there the 7-bay dielectric antenna. It's kind of an interesting design. It's got what they call the funky elbow design. So rather than just a straight transmission line or interbay lines, it actually makes elbows, and that actually helps with change the wavelength, obviously, and it helps with downward radiation. So it's kind of a unique design for them. And actually, it's worked out really well.
Suncast informs me that we have 20 more pictures, and we're almost out of time.
Almost out of time.
So, tell you what, let's see if we can hit about 5 more pictures real quick, and then we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with a tip of the week. And I've got one. Shane, maybe you'll have one. Suncast, let's see if we can buzz through some, and we're going to hit these real quick. Oh, that's pretty.
Okay, same tower at night. It was just a glamour shot.
Yeah. All right, what's next?
This is back to that the device in the shop. This is the laser engraving mode. So you can see it's kind of actually does some really, really fine detail in that stuff. So really cool.
Wow, that machine slices and dices to make mounds of julienne fries.
It really does, yeah. So this is a site that I actually drew the parts in by measuring them. It's a site called TinkerCAD. It's free, and it's made by Autodesk that runs the site. But this is where I drew the parts and created the design to be printed. So,
all right, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. What's next? Oh, now there we have a transmitter.
This was that transmitter that I did the HD upgrade on. So it's kind of a wide shot of that whole installation there.
Nice.
Oh, okay. Here's the infamous vehicle that I just was not all that fond of the user interface. You see the little display on the dash there. It's not a touchscreen. And you see the little knob in the middle there.
Yeah.
It was very unintuitive. I finally figured out how to navigate the thing, but it was just not very intuitive. This particular car was a Mazda CX-30, and I'm sure there are some people who would get into it and be like, "Oh, okay, I understand how this works," but I just couldn't wrap my little engineer brain around it at first. I was like, "Okay, do I push the knob? It's a joystick and a jog wheel, so it's like, okay, do I push it? Do I use a directional? Do I push one of the surrounding buttons? What do I do?" It was so confusing.
Yeah.
And this particular vehicle also had an interesting quirk in that it would not open the gas cap. It would not open the gas door for you unless you met several conditions, but you had to guess what those conditions were. And it turns out, it's got to be in park, it's got to be off, you got to have the door open. I think you can't have the door open, stuff like that. It's really bizarre. But anyway.
And you had to have your credit card out and being standing near the gas pump.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And you had to have your finger on the correct octane rating button. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, what's next on Gaz?
Oh, okay. This was the Wisconsin Broadcasters Conference. It was kind of, the first outing for a bunch of people, since the COVID lockdown in 2020. But it actually was a really good turnout, and it had a lot of really good speakers there. So, in my opinion, one of the there are a number of really great conferences around the country, and this is certainly one of them. So,
Let's see what's next. We'll hit a couple more here, and then we'll have to. Oh, there's a close-up of
That's a
that.
close-up on that really
Counterintuitive.
confusing, the really confusing and counterintuitive control interface.
Well, yeah, different ideas.
And back to the Audi. I think. Oh, I was showing this one. It actually had switched to the web stream by that point. You see the little tag there, maybe that says web.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Next one.
Okay, so this was. I'm trying to remember where this one was. This was just another site that we were kind of checking in on. I think another HD site, basically. So you can see the HD rack and the Nautel GV transmitter there. So
good deal. Hey, what? Let's take a quick pause right here. And Shane, in just a couple minutes, we're going to see if we can have a tip of the week for you. One of the things that our viewers can walk away with and actually put to use. Our show, Shane has done some work in studios as well, and I wish we had time to talk about that. We actually did talk about that on a past episode. We were live at some K-Love studios in Franklin, Tennessee, and Shane joined us on that show. But one of the things that a lot of stations are doing in their TV studios is putting some cameras in there, either to live stream a whole show or just to catch highlights, like when somebody wins a prize or they talk about something particularly funny or interesting. And the folks at Broadcast by Onyx can really help you get that done cleanly, smoothly, and almost completely automatically. Let's check it out from Broadcast by Onyx.
Camera One from Broadcast by Onyx. Designed to bring video to your audio content. Visualizing radio and podcasts for social media. Camera One can automatically create, capture and brand professionally switched video for live streaming or upload, making your production shareable. Control and configure using a web browser on any device. Camera One is available as a 4-camera or 8-camera system using the Blackmagic A10 Mini range, including the A10 Mini Extreme. You can use cameras to suit your studio and your budget. You'll need 1 camera for a studio wide shot and usually 1 camera per microphone. A standard multi-channel sound card or IP driver monitors audio from each studio microphone, and we work natively with Axia systems. Ideally, this will be a post-fader feed from each mic, although you can use pre-fade audio or a mic split if that's all you have available. These audio levels are used to intelligently switch the video feed when each contributor is talking. You can also group microphones together into one shot and use the audio from a mixer's aux bus. You can use Camera One's auto switch feature, or disable it and switch using the on-screen buttons or the buttons on the A10. Recordings can automatically start when you tell the system you're on the air. This on-air indication can be linked to your studio's red lights via IP or an Avantec Adam GPIO interface. You can quickly browse all the videos that have been automatically created during your broadcast, download them and post. Camera One is a user-installable system. You'll need a good spec Windows 10 PC, i7 with plenty of storage and 16 gig of RAM. It's better if this machine isn't used for anything else. Remember, you can control the software in a web browser on another device on your network. Camera One, a thrifty way of creating scroll-stopping video from your show or podcast from Broadcast by Onyx.
You got to check this out, or the other cool products, the software and products that are made by Broadcast by Onyx. The easy way to get to them is to go to bionic.radio. That's it, bionic.radio. And there's other, websites with co.uk or that kind of thing. Or you can Google them, Broadcast by Onyx and Camera One, are really, as he said, a thrifty way to get video onto your radio station, to do visual radio. All righty. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack along with Shane Toven, the senior broadcast engineer for EMF. Shane, you've taught us a lot of cool things today, a lot of advice, a lot of experience under your belt. What might you leave us with?
So I'd say one thing I'll leave you with is never assume anything when it comes to a transmitter site. If I had, if we hadn't taken that bullet out on the top of that transmitter, probably would have continued to stay there, continued to heat up, and eventually caused a failure. So, always, check things. If you've got a thermal imager, use that. If you can take a system apart in the course of other maintenance, go ahead and do that. Take a look. Yeah, never assume, especially if it's been a while since you installed, say, some rigid transmission line.
Do you yourself use a thermal imager?
Yeah, actually, a number of our engineers have them, and they really do come in handy at transmitter sites. I know that's been talked about several times on this show.
So I've got a quick tip, and I just came across this today, I'm excited to share it with you. I just found out about this. There is a website that has to do with frequency coordination of wireless mics, and it's good for a given market. These happen to be NFL markets. And the website is efc.nfl.net. So EFC, Echo Frank Charlie, .NFL, as in National Football League, .net. And the site wants you to log in, but there's a couple of links below the login. You don't have to log in to get this information. I'm sorry I'm not able to share my screen with you, but trust me, you can pick out your state or your city where you have a football team, and you can see a graph showing, where your wireless mics would be prohibited, where you absolutely shouldn't do them, and where it might be green and okay to put your wireless mic frequencies. Trust me, and I'll put this in the show notes, efc.nfl.net. Oh, hey, thank you very much. If you click on scroll down a bit there to a little bit lower on the screen there, Suncast. I think it's the bottom thing. Yeah, EFC frequency documents and tools. And then the top one there, venue spectrum capture archive, and then pick a city. Pick a city. There you go. Was that Baltimore I think you picked? There you go. And so here you can, if you scroll through here, you can see different areas. A little farther down, they get more colorful, I believe. Yeah. Don't put your wireless mic where it says prohibited. There you go. So I haven't looked to see exactly how to interpret all of this, but I'm pretty sure that if it's a green band, you can put your wireless mics there. But there's a lot of sharing going on here, and just because there's not a TV station there doesn't mean that it's okay to go there, because some of that may be part of the spectrum that the cell carriers could turn up, or it's their listen frequency. And so you're not going to see a bunch of RF there because that's what the cell phones transmit back on. But I just found out about this today. Thanks a lot. It was Mike Seaver that passed this along from the Tampa SBE. I'm sorry I forgot your name wrong there, but I'll see if I can find the right credit. Shane Toven, thank you so much for joining me on This Week in Radio Tech for today. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your experience.
Thanks, Kirk. Always fun to join you here.
All right. Thanks again. All right. Hey, be sure you check out our sponsors. They're just terrific people. Nautel, nautel.com/webinars. Of course, Max Connect Wireless and Angry Audio. Also, Broadcasters General Store and Innovonics. And we just heard from Camera One from Bionic.radio and Broadcast Bionics. All right. We're going to be with you next week with another great episode of This Week in Radio Tech. Thanks for your support. Thanks for telling your friends about it. Feel free to share and like and subscribe and all that stuff, but go ahead and do it. It really helps us out. Thanks a lot to Suncast, who has helped us produce with a lot of pictures This Week in Radio Tech this week. And thanks to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.